You finished Riyria Revelations, Riyria Chronicles, Legends of the First Empire, and the Rise and Fall series. You've learned that every book and series has its own characters and plotline, but you've also realized that there's a much larger, overarching plotline that will determine the very existence of Elan. The problem is that there is something that almost every reader misses. I know I didn't see it until very recently. So today, we're going to cover what almost everyone misses and talk about why it's so important in the upcoming final series of Elan, The Cycle.
When I hear people talk about Trylos and Turin, and they talk about, how they expect these two to resolve this issue and how they talk about the two different people, I'm like, you're not getting it yet.
So to understand what we're not getting, we need to look at who are the heroes and villains of our story. Not the ones for the individual series, but the ones for the overall through line. The gods of Elan. So, let's place the 5 teeth of Eden, the Aesira, onto our hero-villain scale. We will start with the most obvious one, the Aesira that is trying to fix the world. Turin has been working for thousands of years to make up for his past mistakes and make Elan whole again. So, we will put him all the way onto the left. And his main opposition for many thousands of years has been Trylos. As Turin sought to fix things, Trylos constantly breaks things. From starting the Dwarven Frey War, to teaching Grindel the art, to causing Emperor Nephron's assassination, to letting Persepliquus be destroyed. He even opposed Galarabrin, the immaculate hero in the Sacred Grove. Over the thousands of years since Trylos escaped the Abyss, he has been indirectly causing untold destruction, so we will put him all the way to the right. Next, we have the twins Farrell and Drome. Farrell, the evil queen of Nifril, is almost certainly on the villain side. She kills and tortures her enemies in Nifril, such as when she kept the dwarf Entvari Burling in an eternal prison. She threatens and lies to get what she wants, so we will put her pretty far into the villain side. Drome, while not as cruel as his sister, still acts as an antagonist in Age of Death and Age of Empire, as he holds Bryn and the party prisoners, so we will put him just a bit to the right. And finally, we have the youngest of the Aesira, Mari. I don't think anyone would argue she belongs all the way to the left. She oversees the beautiful realm of Allison and even forgives her brother who murdered her. So now that we have the Aesira ranked, we can get to the root of the problem, which is that everything we just put down is completely wrong. To see why, let's do a little thought experiment using Lord of the Rings. At the end of the Lord of the Rings, Sauron, Actually, wait. This will have spoilers for Lord of the Rings, but if you haven't seen it already, just go read or watch it. It's been 70 years. All right, let's get back to it. At the end of the Lord of the Rings, Sauron is defeated, but let's pretend that didn't happen. Let's pretend that Sauron captures Frodo and Sam and takes back his ring. He takes the hobbits back so that he can execute them in front of their family and friends. He takes Aragorn and executes him in front of the gates of Minas Tirith. Gimli is executed in front of his family in the Blue Mountains. None of the main characters are spared, each being killed, even Gandalf. Sauron conquers all of Middle-earth, not through sheer force, but by staying true to his name as Sauron the Deceiver. He lies and manipulates the remaining peoples of Middle-earth, and even after he is firmly in control, he continues to hunt down all humans, dwarves, elves, and hobbits that do not bend the knee. And in doing so, he casts the world into an eternal depression. The only upside is that Gandalf is brought back to life, maybe with a brand new color. So Gandalf the Magenta is alone and without allies, and all he can do is try to oppose Sauron and thwart any plans he has. And so now, 6,000 years go by, and Gandalf is still doing what he can to oppose Sauron, while all of our other main characters sit in the afterlife. Yeah, the afterlife part is a little bit different in Tolkien's worlds, but just hang with me, this metaphor is almost over. And all of the sudden, a young girl goes to Gandalf and says, Sauron has changed. He's a good guy now that is trying to fix the world. Do you think Gandalf would believe her? Believe that Sauron, the guy that literally is known for manipulating people, tricking good people into doing bad things, has actually changed? So it's time to end this analogy, as a lot of people have probably guessed where this is going. In this situation, Sauron is Turin. Turin is the big bad of Elan. For thousands of years, this wasn't the hero-villain scale. This was.
Turin killed his brother Trylos and brutally declared himself king. And when his remaining siblings dared to stand up against him, he systematically killed each of them, and then continued killing their peoples. And if you think Sauron was a master manipulator, imagine someone who has perfect foresight, who can run through 10,000 different ways of manipulating you in his head just to find the one that is guaranteed to get you to do what he wants.
Alright, so let's talk about Turin for a bit. Why is it that most readers love the character of Turin and think of him as a good guy? Obviously, we see him doing many great things, but that doesn't change the fact that he had a terrible past. The books don't shy away from telling us about many of the bad things in his previous life as well. And even when Turin himself is confronted with it, he doesn't deny them. So why is it that most readers overlook this? The answer is in first impressions. Most readers already know how they feel about the character of Turin long before we hear about all the terrible things he did. In fact, this isn't a new thing in fantasy. I'm thinking about a character in Stormlight Archives that does the exact same thing. Heck, even Royce does the same thing in this series.
Most Riyria readers love Royce, and a large part of that is because we saw Royce trying to be a better person later in his life, long before we saw him do some of the absolutely reprehensible things he did early in his life.
And this is important to do as a writer. Making readers feel connected with and like characters is needed in a story. It means that when a character is put in a life or death situation, we care about whether they live or die. We become emotionally attached to characters. And so it was important for Sullivan to introduce Turin as he did. Imagine another scenario where Turin was introduced chronologically, first with the bad stuff and then with the good. It would almost be like how we were introduced to Mwandale.
Can you imagine reading a bunch of series that followed Mwandale trying to atone for all the terrible stuff he did? I don't think those books would sell as well.
Alright, so now that we've gotten it out of the way that Turin was a terrible person, I think we can all mostly agree that he has truly changed and is trying to do good and fix the world.
Which would change our hero-villain scale to this. Now I can hear some of you still disagreeing with some of these, so let's go through the remaining Aesira one by one. First, Mari. I don't think anyone is disagreeing that Mari is good through and through. We only ever see her doing good and hear about her doing good. The other three Aesira are the ones you may need some convincing about.
Let's start with Ferrell and Drome. After Turin kills Trylos and starts his dark reign, both Ferrell and Drome leave Erebus with their peoples and oppose him. And though they were Aesira, neither could stand against him and both were killed, both sacrificing their lives to stand against Turin's tyranny. They then go to Pyre, where they create and establish their realms of Rel and Nifril. And as new people die and enter Pyre, they hear about Turin's continued oppression and killing of their peoples, though they do eventually hear that the war has ended.
Then, thousands of years later, they get word that a group of people following Turin may be coming into Pyre, bearing the one thing that could set Drome and Ferrell free in order to have a second chance to oppose their evil brother. When the group arrives, Drome asks them to come speak with him at his castle. When they refuse, he sends out his guards to bring them back without harming them. When he finally meets the group, he asks them for information, but they refuse. Even though they may have Eaton's key, Drome decides to keep them trapped in the room and give them time to think about whether they will tell him anything. He doesn't torture them or just forcibly search them. Instead, he puts them in a glorified timeout, like a father.
Many people could probably go along with Drome not being evil. But now let's talk about his sister, Ferrell, the evil queen of Nifril. On the surface, Ferrell fits many of the characteristics of a villain, but when we take a closer look at her actions, especially with the knowledge of her history, a different picture starts to emerge.
First, we need to look at her as the leader and creator of Nifril. Many readers, when they first read Age of Death, view Nifril almost like hell, the place where bad people are forced to spend eternity. But that just isn't the case.
The people in Nifril are the bold, the ambitious, the ones that keep driving for more and to be better. The daily battles waged in Nifril aren't a punishment, they're a reward. A way to pass the time, entertainment, a way to feel alive even though you're technically dead. Of course, there are those that fall into the abyss that definitely aren't having a good time, but overall, most people in Nifril could go back to Rel if they really wanted to, but they choose not to. So Nifril definitely isn't hell.
One of the most telling scenes about who Farrell truly is can be seen at the battle at the Allison Bridge, or more specifically, what happens after. Bryn and company are trying to get to the Allison Gate with the Key of Eden. Just like Drome, Farrell desperately wants the key in order to escape Pyre, so she sends everything she has to stop them. And as we know, several of Bryn's party fall into the abyss along with the key. That is where the book ends, but what happens off-screen is what is so telling. Moya, Tech-Chin, Rain, and everyone who helped the group, such as King Midian and Pheneleus, are all still there. All those that opposed Farrell and the reason she doesn't have the key are just sitting there defeated, as no one can match Farrell at that moment.
And what does Farrell do? She just lets them go. She doesn't imprison them, throw them into the abyss, or torture them. She realizes that the key is gone, and there's no reason to harm them. Forget about being a villain. I think a morally gray character wouldn't have let them go that easily. But let's talk about some of the other morally questionable things she does. She definitely threatens characters with terrible things, such as when she threatens to give Tesh to Sebek, or when she threatens warriors at the battle that the dragon ore will eat them.
Surprisingly, we never see those threats fulfilled, a case where her bark is worse than her bite. One case readers might bring up is her imprisonment of Antvari Burling. She keeps Antvari trapped in a hole in an eternal prison so that he can't tell others about the bomb Farrell had him construct on the Allison Bridge.
And while trapping Antvari was certainly a cruel thing to do, we have to look at Farrell's motives. As Antvari explains, the reason that Farrell wanted the bomb on the bridge was so that when the final battle, Golrock, occurred, Farrell and all of those who are with her in opposing Turin could escape first and then blow up the bridge. This is actually a pretty good plan. Turin certainly has many followers in Nifril, including some very powerful ones, such as the three Riva who tried to destroy the world and rent an entire continent on Elan. These people probably are in Nifril. Even though we don't see them, that probably makes sense since they're trying to keep their distance from Farrell. But they certainly would be a force to reckon with in Golrock.
So Farrell definitely has a good reason to keep the information about the bomb a secret. Of course, you can still argue keeping Antvari in a prison is cruel, but think about this. A much safer course of action for Farrell would have been to throw Antvari into the abyss. There is no way the secret would have gotten out then. But she instead chose a riskier path of just keeping him imprisoned, a much more merciful fate than the abyss.
There is no denying that Farrell is ambitious, bold, and hates to lose. But in her mind, the world didn't just break because of Turin. It broke because she failed to stop him. Some of her methods may seem extreme, but the downside to her losing is Turin winning again and continuing to break the world under his tyrannical rule. She failed once, but she'll do anything she can to make sure she doesn't fail again.
Readers may not agree with her tactics, but I believe she made it clear that she does not delight in being cruel. She does not harm if it's not necessary, and her evil queen demeanor is much more of a front than she cares to admit.
So finally we get to Trylos. Unlike his three younger siblings, he didn't fight in the first war against Turin due to the fact that Turin killed him before it even began. But given all we know about him prior to that was that he loved Muriel and that Turin killed him for it, he doesn't seem evil yet.
Once he returned from Pyre, he did begin the war between the dwarves and the Fray. Or did he? He of course told King Midian and the dwarves about the fruit of Riyria, but it was King Midian who started the war. And when the dwarves were slaughtering the innocent Fray, Trylos stepped in and taught Pheneleus the art in order to save them.
When Pheneleus did not wipe out the dwarves though, Trylos knew something was wrong. Turin up to his usual schemes once again. Trylos couldn't comprehend that Turin could have turned from his evil ways, and so anything Trylos could do to throw a wrench in Turin's plans had to be a good thing.
He taught Grendel the art, though he didn't make him do any of the terrible things that Grendel did. Same with Mwandale. Trylos did threaten Bryn, though he later states those were all empty threats to try and scare her. Perhaps the most directly immoral thing Trylos did was when he tricked Zephyrin into killing Nephron, though the death of someone as immoral as Nephron in order to finally lure out the most evil person on the planet, Turin, doesn't seem that bad. Trylos even seems to feel bad for Zephyrin losing her entrance into Pyre because of that. In fact, through all the actions Trylos takes, we never see him directly kill anyone, which is something we see Turin doing multiple times while he is trying to fix the world.
A lot of readers may not agree with the approaches or actions taken by the Aesira, but that doesn't change the fact that the only Aesira who was ever a villain was Turin while he was Rex Uberlin. And that's what Sullivan is talking about. In the coming battles, it isn't going to be Trylos versus Turin or Turin versus the other Aesira. Turin's siblings' only mistake is not realizing that Turin is reformed. And honestly, they would be kind of crazy to believe that given his past history.
But with what is about to come to Elan, all 5 better get on the same side quick, because they are all going to be needed. And honestly, that might still not be enough.
Hey everyone! This video is one I thought about a while before I actually made it. It was hard for me to get past some of my preconceived notions about some of the characters. And it wasn't until I heard Sullivan make a passing analogy to Lord of the Rings that it clicked. And yes, I did steal that analogy. I know some people might still be skeptical about this, and I certainly was for a long time. But I dare those readers to go back and reread Age of Death and Age of Empire with all of this in mind. There are a lot of small little things that make so much more sense when you approach it from this lens. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.
Thank you so much for watching today's video. Be sure to subscribe and watch my other videos to learn more about the world of Elan and Riyria. Thanks!